What's up, guys? We're here at the office today. We are going to discuss the Fair Housing Act and what led to it, what it is, and who it protects, and who it actually enforces rules upon. So, the Fair Housing Act was introduced and passed into law in 1968 by our Congress. What it does, it prohibits discrimination by direct housing partners or providers, and it protects a protected class of citizens. So we're going to go over what the direct housing providers are and what the protected classes are, and kind of give a breakdown of each of those protected classes, what they mean, and some examples of how they were being discriminated with and in that housing market, and why the Fair Housing Act was introduced. So to start, the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination by direct housing providers. Direct housing providers can include, but are not limited to, landlords, real estate agents or brokerages, banks, lending institutions, homeowners associations, property management associations, and city municipalities like city water, electrical, things like that. Anything that involves directly influencing whether someone can get into a home or get into a neighborhood is what is considered a direct housing provider. Protected classes. The protected classes include religions, sex orientation, race or color, national origin, familial status, and disability. So there are 6 protected classes, and we're going to break down those and kind of go over a little bit of each one. So we're going to go based off religion. So you can't discriminate based on religion. This Fair Housing Act prohibited discrimination on religions where such practices as discrimination against certain religions to zoning ordinance designed to limit the use of private homes for places of worship. So this basically said that the government couldn't come and shut you down, or you couldn't stop somebody from having a place to worship if they decided to worship in their own home. Discrimination based off race. The Fair Housing Act's central objective was, when it was introduced in 1968, was during the whole civil rights movement and things like that. So during this whole time period, everything was it was wild. We all know this. So the Fair Housing Act central objective in 1968 was to eliminate race discrimination in housing to make it fairer for all. This prohibited the practice of steering homeowners to certain areas based off race or color. Block busting, steering, things like that were introduced or weren't introduced, but they were being used as tools to keep people of certain colors or certain races out of certain neighborhoods. So this act prevented discrimination based off of your race or your color. Discrimination in housing based on sex, and this is more so for sexual harassment, things like that. This was why it was introduced. This part of the bill prohibits discrimination based on a person's sex, with the priority during the time was primarily focused on sexual harassment in housing, primarily against women, single mothers who were, being asked to do certain things that obviously are illegal in order to get certain housing. People were preying upon single mothers at the time, and this being introduced helped to protect women in general, mostly from these acts, and gave them a way to fight back if they were discriminated against based off their, sexual orientation. Discrimination based upon national origin. So with America being a nation that is very open to immigration, the Fair Housing Act prohibits the discrimination based on what country someone is from or where their family originated from. So a big thing that or a big population of our country is Hispanic. So that was a big reason why the Fair Housing Act was introduced, was to help keep discrimination from happening against people from south of the border or from other countries for that matter. It didn't really necessarily have to be Hispanic culture, but that was the primary reason for including national origin in this. So you couldn't discriminate based off where someone was from or where their family was from. So, that could be anything from someone from the Middle East, from someone from Asia or something like that. It could be, anything of that nature. You can't discriminate on someone based off where they are from or where their family's from. Discrimination based on familial status. This kind of provides some protection for families that, maybe that have young children in the home. So if you have a family of 3 and they're all under age of 18, this act actually help protect families from being discriminated against, from getting housing and things like that. So you a landlord couldn't prevent you from getting into a home based off you having a family. In addition to prohibiting the denial of housing to families with children, the act also prevents housing providers from imposing any special requirements or any conditions on tenants that do have custody of children. So there can't be any sort of special stipulations added into your lease agreement that because you have children, you have to do certain things to upkeep your lease. The exception to this one is the Housing for Older Persons Act. If a facility operates as senior housing, which is 55 or older, then they are exempt from some of this, which means if you're in a housing environment that is primarily designated 55 and older for senior housing, then they can discriminate someone that may have, children that live with them under the age of 18. There could be laws in place that protect this facility from having to let someone move in that does have family members that are under the age of 18. The last one we're going to talk about is discrimination based on disability. And I got into this a little bit last night and started reading a lot about what some of the disabilities can include. And though I may not agree with all of them, we're going to go over some of them and let you know what is considered discrimination based off disabilities and what those disabilities may include. This prohibits discrimination based on anyone with a disability described as individuals with mental or physical impairments that substantially inhibit one or more of life's major activities. So if impairments can include blindness, hearing, mobility, HIV infection, learning disability, mental handicaps, head injuries, mental illness, chronic fatigue, drug addiction, and alcoholism are also included in these disabilities. So, you can't discriminate based off someone based off their drug habits or things like that. Major life activity that can be defined as, and these are only one of the things that need to be impaired to be considered a disability. It could be seeing, hearing, walking, breathing, or caring for oneself, speaking, or working. So that's basically what a disability is defined as. There's a lot of room there to kind of...
A lot of gray areas.
Yeah, a lot of gray areas, exactly. Also, the exemption to this, persons convicted for illegal manufacturing of controlled substances, users of controlled substances, juvenile offenders, and sexual offenders are not considered disabled under this act, thankfully. So again, let's recap a little bit. There are 6 protected classes that direct housing providers are directly prohibited from discrimination. And again, the direct housing providers include landlords, real estate agents, brokers, real estate firms, teams, banks, lending institutions, and that includes their underwriters and the whole process with them, homeowners associations, property management teams, things like that, and municipalities, which include your city electric, water, things like that. The protected classes, again, there's 6 of them. Those include religion, sex, race or color, national origin, familial status, or disability. So again, just keep in mind if you come across somebody and you have questions about whether you might be teetering the line on something, or if someone makes you feel like a client makes you feel uncomfortable or something, that you may want to check with your broker or your boss or whoever it may be on whether or not that you have possibly or coming close to lines of discrimination, which you don't see a whole lot of it, but it's really good if you use common sense to know that, to be fair. And that's, I guess, what the Fair Housing Act really is there for, is to prevent discrimination. Just be a good person, don't discriminate against people, and you all should be good. But anyway, thanks for coming into my Dustin talk for the day. I appreciate you guys and hope you have a wonderful Thursday.
Thank you, Dustin.